The following program is a production of Hawike Kauaʻi Community Media. Island Alert was made possible in part by the Kauaʻi Island Utility Cooperative.
Aloha Kauaʻi, I'm your host, Max Richardson. You're about to watch the second half of my interview with Elton Ushio, the administrator of Kauaʻi's Emergency Management Agency. We showed the first half on last month's episode, so if you haven't seen it, you may want to check it out on our YouTube channel, or you can listen to the audio version wherever you get your podcasts. Now, let's check out the rest of the interview.
So let's get into a little more specifics. Can you walk us through what KEMA's response plan would be for a major disaster like a hurricane or a tsunami, God forbid?
Okay. So here's what I'll do, because there's no one single plan that will encompass everything. So I'll walk you through hurricane scenario. Okay. So even before a hurricane threatens, your viewers and listeners would know that hurricane season in Hawaii runs from June through November for the Central Pacific. Pre-season, we're getting ready. We're making sure plans are up to date, checklists, contact lists, and we even ask that our partner supporting responding entities do their respective preparedness, front-end stuff. We invite our partners when the National Weather Service hosts their annual tropical cyclone season outlook. And we go over the various tropical cyclone weather products that may be issued during the season, just to make sure everyone's up to speed. So that's all front end. But when stuff happens, what do we do? So whenever a tropical cyclone enters the Central Pacific, which crosses that 140 meridian west line, or forms in the Central Pacific, we, on a statewide level, convene a daily statewide coordination call via video teleconference. So this is governor, the mayors, the State Emergency Operations Center or EOC, all the county EOCs, Weather Service, and all of the state, federal, county primary partners, as well as some on the NGO side. For KEMA, we have our extensive list of participants, some of whom have a seat in the EOC, others who join us virtually. And then we have these daily and sometimes twice daily weather briefs. So that ensures shared awareness, common operating picture, and coordination, even when the storm is a good 5 days out plus.
Okay. So as soon as the storm crosses into our AOR, you guys are having meetings every single day?
Yeah.
Okay.
Then if any county is within the cone, gets closer, it escalates to where a watch product or a warning product is issued, the frequency of those meetings escalate. At the appropriate time, we will be convening what we call our All Hazards Incident Management Team, AHIMT. That's a combination, though, of EOC representatives from the various disciplines, various partners, and specifically trained personnel to help us run ICS or Incident Command System within the EOC. And we will start working on our specific incident action plan, first of all, pre-impact and immediate post-impact for that event. And when the storm comes, we'll hunker down and execute those plans and do our best. And very complex. I could go on and on and on, but there's so many different areas we're addressing. Part of this process is amplified public messaging, making sure our community is aware, how we're going to do mass notification and warning, if we're going to do shelters or refuge areas, and all of that stuff. That's all being coordinated out of the Emergency Operations Center.
Okay. And so what kinds of factors would go into making those decisions, like whether or not to do shelters? Is it like a severity thing? Like, oh, we don't think it's going to be bad enough to need shelters, or is it?
So yeah, many of those decisions. So the difficult ones tend to be evacuations and sheltering.
I see.
So, for any storm, for example, you look at the path. We get something called a tropical cyclone coordination worksheet where we see most likely scenarios, worst case scenarios. We can get storm surge modeling. Knock on wood, we haven't had to use that tropical cyclone in quite a while and do coastal evacuations. But if the need was there, we would execute. And then, we will decide what shelters, what areas, and, we work with various partners on how we staff those, how we open them up. And it really is a whole community approach, because if you look at our shelter facilities or our refuge areas on Kauaʻi, it's a combination. There's many Department of Education facilities. There's some county facilities, neighborhood centers. In some cases, there's Kauaʻi Community College. And so we have various locations. So we're working with different owners, operators, even some private shelters that are willing to stand up. And then work closely with partner entities. Some of those who I already mentioned, but also the American Red Cross on staffing.
So going off the cards a little bit here, but what does it take to stand up one of those shelters when the time comes? Because obviously they're not staffed year round. Like you said, most of them serve other purposes outside of being an emergency shelter. So, let's say right now we got to stand up one of those shelters. What are we doing?
So we'll do our best in any given situation. So let's take like a short to no notice event, like the April 2024 floods. We knew a few days prior that we might get really bad weather, and we started weather briefs with the Weather Service and our local partners on island. We didn't realize the magnitude to which flooding would occur in certain locations. The Weather Service returns for some of the gauges in brief periods of time met or exceeded 500 to 1,000-year events. So it's spectacular in some areas. So
yeah, it was pretty rainy.
Yeah. So when we found that residential evacuations were having to take place, when the fire department had responded to 911 calls, we hadn't anticipated that degree, but we had to open shelters very quickly. And it was difficult for us to spin up appropriate locations. We have our list, but we're from the EOC, we're thinking, okay, Koloa, let's open facility in Koloa that we have access to. What we hadn't realized in the time that portions of the town were flooded. Or even for Kapa'a, we hadn't realized that routes to the shelter were somewhere underwater. So even to get additional staff to KEMA at the EOC, some people took quite a while to come in. So, it can be a very challenging process with short to no notice in a situation like that. Then we're just picking a best available area. And then if in that moment, okay, it's going to take too long for us to get a Department of Education person to come in with the key, because we need a facility owner or operator with the key who knows their facility. And then we want to put in shelter staffing. If you don't have Red Cross volunteers in the area, that's our preference. But if we don't, then we may be asking for support from the partner agency, like Parks and Recreation, the Community College, DOE. So it's always much, much easier when we have days ahead to plan, like a tropical cyclone coming in, and we're, like I said, 5 days out, we're already starting the daily calls, starting to coordinate. But short notice stuff, it can be a challenge. And sometimes it comes down to us knowing that a certain community partner, like a particular church, is willing to open their doors, a community center, a non-county. And then we just have to make contact, get the key there, a person with the key, open the facility, and hopefully get staffing. But it can be a challenge at times.
So it sounds like flexibility is kind of a core value for KEMA.
I think adaptability, flexibility, scalability. And then, staff just has to be calm under fire and ready to proceed, always trying our very best.
All right. So the main function, for those that don't know, the main function of like an emergency management agency like KEMA is to coordinate, right, and to be the command center. Correct me if I'm wrong. So how does KEMA coordinate with other first responders like the police, the fire department, EMS, other healthcare providers? I guess kind of give me some specifics if you can on like what that looks like, what your kind of taking command of all those agencies looks like.
All right. So yeah, it really depends on the incident type. Also the scale and scope of the incident. To tell you the truth, I would say over 99% of the time, our heroic dispatchers at 911 and our frontline first responders, police, fire, EMS, and even the supporting entities like highways and roads crews, they will handle the emergency that pops up with absolutely no need for KEMA's involvement. KEMA gets involved when the incident is of a nature that gets more complex, much larger scale or scope, more complicated multi-agency coordination, and particularly if external resources or off-island or military assets are needed. We are that conduit to getting that support. So, it mentioned about us being the command center. Not always the case. More often than not, the command post is actually in the field. The Incident Command Post, or acronym is ICP, and the EOC activates as a supporting entity. But at times, we manage centrally from the EOC, where leadership and everyone hunkers down there. And, then it can be a high level of coordination with the incident management team, KEMA, Mayor Kauaʻi, and everybody else in the EOC. So you may be familiar with some of our larger events that I can go into more detail later. But you had asked specifically for some of these first responder entities. So police, Kauaʻi Police Department primarily. We do have some limited state and federal law enforcement on island, but KPD is the big show. Kauaʻi Fire Department, and again, we do have other fire response entities at PMRF and the airport. But they have permanent seats in our EOC, and they are members of our incident management team. But also healthcare. With healthcare, our primary link to that industry is via the Department of Health's Kauaʻi District Health Office. So Dr. Berriman, Lauren Guess, and their people. But we also have a seat for a liaison from the Hawaii Healthcare Emergency Management Group, who gets to sit in our EOC with us. So all of those and many other entities will respond as needed to the EOC. So it depends on the nature of the activation and the event that we're trying to address. And it really is this multidisciplinary, all hazards, whole community approach that we take. That being said, entities you mentioned and many others, we don't only work with them when bad things happen and when we're responding, but we're already doing that on the front end in the preparedness phase, plans, training, exercise, equipment. To a certain extent in the mitigation phase, when we're trying to identify and reduce or address threats ahead of time. And then, post-event recovery, we work very closely with them as well. So all phases of emergency management work closely with full spectrum of partners. So if you'd like some examples that, your audience may recall more, from recent years or events, and you want to see what EOC or KEMA coordination looks like, can think back to the COVID-19 pandemic and our coordinated response, where not everyone knows this, but we had activated our EOC for over 2 years. And, Mayor Kauaʻi and our incident management team, we had Dr. Berriman and the Department of Health people in there as our subject matter experts. and all of our team hunkered down 2 years plus, and we did our best to respond to and address the threats and the various complex factors and operations that we had to do with COVID-19. And I know some of the actions weren't popular with everyone, but I think that's a good example of our longest running, most complex incident in recent memory. And I think the record speaks for itself, where if you track the pandemic and you look at the disease incidents and fatalities, Kauaʻi did very well. I think our numbers were better than the other counties in the state, and we were one of the 2 best states in the nation. So it was a very safe place to be for the most part here. But that was, because the response, followed same lines that we would for other major events. And that's, we didn't really know that's the way to proceed, but we followed our training and our models and, our plans, and it ended up working out that way. So, Kauaʻi was spared from the, early on at least, the care home, prison, hospital outbreaks that ravaged the rest of the nation. So we're very thankful for that and the team that responded. More recently, we had a full activation, very robust response to the April 24 flooding, and then a very active fire season this year. We had
I'll say.
Quite an event with especially the Hanapepe Kauaʻi fire, where it truly did take that whole community, all levels of government and private sector community-based response to save that community at Kauaʻi.
Cool. All right. Yeah, when you were talking about big kind disasters, standing up the EOC for a long time, that was the first place that my mind went, was when we had COVID-19 and Mayor was giving briefings from the EOC every day.
Yeah, every day.
You guys were working your butts off.
That was something.
All right, so talking about reaching out to the folks at home, what are some programs or workshops that KEMA offers to educate the public about disaster preparedness? And, let's hear about some specific ones if you can.
Okay. So, at KEMA, we do our best to provide information to the public on the front end about preparedness, resilience. Oftentimes we work via our county and sometimes even the state or HAIMA public information officers or PIOs. We try to do products or press releases prior to, say, hurricane season every year to educate the public, recommend that they build their kits, and just be ready and aware that the hurricane season is coming. We also do something similar during Tsunami Awareness Month every year. And we try to kind of regularly put out media products and releases. And then on occasion, interviews such as your show here is absolutely terrific because it reaches a very vast viewer audience and, accessible to many, much more than if we do in-person outreach, which I'll talk about in a minute. Even HAIMA has sponsored, production of, say, or they supported the Kuleana series that aired on a local news channel. And, those were not only aired, but also available, just like your show, via YouTube or online videos that people can look at them in the future. So our engagement using media and professionals such as yourselves is something we actively try to do, as well as working through our PIO's office. Another area is in-person outreach. So we have a limited capability to do that, given limited staffing and that we can't be sending staff out every day to be doing outreach. But we will meet with community groups, businesses, community associations. We do some outreach at DOE schools, Career Day, speaking at classrooms. As feasible, even our partner agencies, particularly those that play a critical role, such as, say, KIUC and others, we will meet and do presentations for their staff. We'll also participate in preparedness fairs sponsored by various organizations like hotels, faith-based organizations, and what have you. Because we really do, again, feel that preparedness and resilience starts at that individual and household level, and outreach that we can do to community, private sector, governmental partners, everything we can do on the front end to be better prepared and more resilient makes everyone's job safer later when disaster strikes, and hopefully, supports a more positive outcome.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I think the biggest factor in whether you can successfully withstand an emergency is whether you were prepared for it ahead of time. I think like whether your experience putting out a fire is going to be very different depending on whether or not you have a fire extinguisher. So yeah, I couldn't agree with what you said more. Let's talk tech.
All right.
What role would you say technology plays in KEMA's disaster preparedness and disaster response efforts?
Wow, yeah, technology plays a very significant role. In fact, I dare say that there can be an over-reliance on technology because there's so many advanced systems that we use. So, knock on wood, again, I talked about one of the threats being cyber and IT threats. And, that is one area that could potentially affect the various technologies that we use. But, again, we have several different systems, not all eggs in one basket, multiple means, redundant telecom and internet that we utilize. But let me go over some of the tech because you asked. So let's just pick an area because there's so many different things we can talk about. But in the wake of the Maui wildfires, let's talk about wildland fire response. So technology is there. We have been doing phased upgrades to our public safety radio system and the radios that we use. So today we have frontline fire units that utilize newer radios that have the ability to seamlessly utilize either our 800 megahertz radio system or FirstNet, which is a cellular voice and data network dedicated to first responders utilizing AT&T technology. Those radios have coverage where one or the other tends to have spotty coverage or not have coverage. So that enhances our response capability. And then for responder safety, we can actually see where each unit is on the map. So that's one area of technology that we leverage. We also access remote cameras used by the Federal Aviation Administration. Public can. It's available online, but we can monitor fires that way. Our Kauaʻi Fire Department, Chief Gibson and crew are leveraging these newer N5 sensors that can detect smoke particles and particulates, and they're kind of pilot testing them island-wide. That's a new area of technology. We are experimenting with and using various tools that can map or detect, that can detect or map, and in some cases predict fire progression using satellite-based technology. So we're looking into some partnerships with military partners on some of those. So more technology stuff. Again, so many different tools out there, but those are just some of the few in more recent months or in the past year that we've started to get into. And I think just one more new tool that we utilize is we have the ability to also see where our Air One or fire response helicopter is while it's in flight, where it's making water drops. So sometimes, the Emergency Operations Center or EOC doesn't quite have complete situational awareness of where the fire is occurring. But before, when things are just starting, we're able to fire up our systems and see where the chopper is doing water drops, and then we know exactly where it is.
Right.
So.
All right. So it sounds like technology plays quite the role in your operations. And I know we talked a little bit about mobile apps, but what about social media? Do you guys, what are your guys' socials? I can throw them up in the show notes and on screen if you know offhand what the social handles are.
Yeah. So for KEMA, we do not maintain a social media presence. However, County of Kauaʻi has a Facebook page, and our PIOs can get that information to you, or you can search for County of Kauaʻi on that platform, and you can find that information.
It sounds like this question might almost seem redundant because it sounds like KEMA's whole operation is a significant challenge. But what are the biggest challenges, in your opinion, personally, that you think KEMA faces in achieving its mission? And how are you working to overcome those?
Yeah, that's a difficult question to answer because, if you look at our mission, seems pretty straightforward, but even one life or one house loss is a very significant impact. So it's the need to maintain this spirit of continuous improvement. Even if we just had a successful outcome to a big incident, a fire, storm, what have you, we always have to be looking at what we did, capture any lessons, what we can do better. And then, if we have to make improvements, identify what they are and who is responsible for making those improvements or corrections, and then also by when. So there's a lot of follow-up and continuous analysis, continuous need for improvement. So the job is never boring, always high stakes. Adding to that, I'm very fortunate to have a great team at KEMA. Starts with the mayor's office and Mayor Kawakami's leadership, and all the way down, all of our departments, state, federal, non-governmental partners, and then, of course, our staff. But we really need to create sustainable leadership pipeline, so to speak, to where people such as myself, our executive officer, Solomon Kanoho, our incident management team leader, Gary Hudson, our mitigation lead and principal project manager, David Kennard, and all, where we can eventually be replaced with new and rising staff. We're very top heavy right now, and we have a good crop of newer staff, but we have to look, not only for continuous improvement, but also sustainable leadership over the long term. So with that being said, with the mayor and the county council support, KEMA was able to create what we're calling our Emergency Management Reserve Corps. So it's just starting up now. We're starting to fill those positions. And what we're doing is we're hiring retired we're hiring retirees with prior training and credentialing in incident management roles or experience in EOC response, and we bring them back on contracts where we can compensate them hourly, and at a minimum we require them to maintain at least 40 active hours per year, training, exercise. If we have a pre-planned event like Lights on Rice, believe it or not, we had a plan in the background just in case things went wrong there. We knew every unit, every call sign on the radio, their locations, and all. We're tracking all of that. All that occurred. But we'll bring them back for those pre-planned stuff. And then when bad stuff happens, they can be activated even if I'm on vacation or we have too few staff. I mean, really large incidents happen, and your ability to staff the EOC with skilled personnel can be hard pressed. So in the 2018 floods, the gravity of that situation with all those major landslides, response going on all over. Yeah, we had to eventually request and bring in the staff augmentation from City and County of Honolulu Department of Emergency Management and their incident management team. and Maui County for a few days, and then they worked with us, helped us until we achieved a better degree of incident stabilization and went on from there. But we're trying to build that here on Kauaʻi, because one thing we learned during COVID is that there's this possibility that we are on our own, and all we've got is what we got right here on Kauaʻi. So yeah, with that incident management, not with the incident management team, but with that reserve corps, we're trying to build that, that ability to sustain over the long term.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea, especially for a community as rural and as small as ours, where, you might not have access to as many full-time staff members or the funding for them, but a Reserve Corps sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, but I will tell you that, not speaking not only for myself, but for others in the profession, when we look at not only recent events in Hawaii, but nationwide, there is a lot of scrutiny on emergency management. And that's unfortunate because, I have heard from, some people looking at getting into the field, or others who are already in the field who would not aspire to be in that hot seat. But we really need people, capable people who are willing to work with us and, be in organizations such as KEMA. And so that is a challenge over the long term.
Well, I'm glad that there are at least some people, fine people such as yourself, that are willing to answer that call. And I, for one, think you guys are doing a great job. I mean, I've lived in plenty of different places, and I've seen plenty of different emergencies, and, emergencies are always crazy, and they never go as planned, and it's always going to be a bit of a cluster type situation. But I don't see how we on Kauai could handle emergencies better than we currently do. We have a lot of unexpected stuff happen. We don't have a lot of people die or a lot of property get destroyed. And that's, I think that's a testament to the quality of your work, personally.
Yeah.
I didn't write that down.
Thank you very much.
That's what I think.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. But, again, credit really needs to go to the entire team. Current administration and prior mayors and prior generations in civil defense and emergency management who helped us get to where we are today, and all of our current partners involved can't possibly do it without them. Kauaʻi is the smallest of the major counties in Hawaii, other than Kalavao on Molokai. But although we're the smallest, we have maintained that sense of ohana and kuleana and our shared responsibility. So we really do have what I see as a very fortunate sense and culture of that collaboration, cooperation in the Emergency Operations Center and with our field response and all of our response partners. And we see it all the time. With or without KEMA involvement, community and our partners, everyone comes together. And again, with that, it maximizes our chance for a more positive outcome.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's safe to say we've got some well-qualified and dedicated people protecting us and our island. And that's a big part of why I wanted to do this show in the first place, is to showcase you guys and the awesome job you're doing.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here as your guest.
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure to have you. Yeah, I appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy. So last thing, of the things that I haven't asked you yet, what message would you like to send to the people of Kauai about their role in emergency management?
So again, as far as the people of Kauai, I would repeat my prior comments that, and I'll improve a little bit on that. But to the people of Kauai, I would say that, emergency management really is a whole community thing, so to speak. It takes all of us. It's not like KEMA is going to save everyone or government's going to be the answer to everything. No, not at all. Preparedness, resilience, again, starts at that individual and household levels. It's everyone's kuleana, everyone's responsibility, perhaps except for those who would not be able to take care of themselves. So young children, kupuna, just those, who need our help. That's where that whole community approach really comes into play. The Kauaʻi Emergency Management Agency will do our best always to provide leadership and coordination for any major incident in which we're involved or activated. And again, we'll work with all levels of government, private sector, partners, community-based, what have you. But each and every one of the viewing audience can do their part to be better aware, better prepared, more resilient. And, that makes all of Kauaʻi better prepared. So it's everyone's responsibility. That would be my message. Sorry if it doesn't come across so smoothly, but I just...
No, it's fine. I totally understand. I think that's a good message to get across, is that it's on each and every one of us to take care of ourselves and one another. And that is going to yield the best chance of a good result when bad things happen.
Yeah.
Well, that's our show. Elton, thank you so much for coming out and talking to me. It's a pleasure to have you on. And be sure to tune in next month. I'll be talking to another one of Kauai's professional heroes. And in the meantime, don't forget to check out our other shows like the Hawike Weekly, Talkin' Trash, or the Weekly Council Updates. And if you're watching this online, like, follow, subscribe, all that stuff. You know what to do. You know how this works by now. Until next time, stay safe out there. Aloha.
Aloha. Thank you, Max.
We go. I'm going to read this now. Now I'm going to read it. Well, that's our show. Elton, thank you so much.